Hello, my name is Amelia. I'm 14 years old, and I'd like to share with you a talk I gave at school to help raise awareness about lower limb disease. In September of 2000, a lady named Emma Christopherson died milliseconds after stepping off with a 20-hour flight from Australia to the UK. Just steps off the plane, she collapsed in the line and met the end of her life at just 28 years of age. What Emma had suffered with a familial blood clot located in her calf and caused solely from the act of sitting down in her seat. Medically, this is known as a deep vein thrombosis, or a DVT, caused by the lessening of work of the body's calf pump, related in Emma's case to a very long flight. In another life, the result of her flight may have been a different type of lower leg wound, for example a venous leg ulcer or a VLU, which may not have killed Emma, but would have subjected her to the speech all the same. Though Emma's death was surely tragic, it's not as uncommon of an occurrence as you may think. In fact, a full 2% of the UK's population are affected by lower limb ulceration annually. This figure mostly regards those with VLUs, and less than a quarter of those in it receive the appropriate assessment and treatment that they deserve. In the past few years, this fact has been noticed by many wound care professionals, bringing about the term of an invisible crisis, which I'll talk about today, hoping to uncover more. In 2018, £3 billion was spent by the NHS on managing these patients, making it the sixth largest spend of the NHS that year, the third being cancer and the first diabetes. Most of the burden of managing these patients falls to community nursing staff, namely district nurses. These are nurses who drive to patients' homes rather than working in clinics and hospitals. So what's it like to live with a venous leg ulcer? Although many of these can be healed within a few months thanks to the aid of dressing and compression, a large amount of people have to live with one for many years. For example, I recently saw the story of a lady named Tracy, who had a venous leg ulcer for 15 whole years. It started in her early 20s, and during this period, she had to visit a clinic multiple times a week, meaning it was hard for her to hold down a job, resulting in Tracy having virtually no pension. She went through her 20s and 30s with a wound that smelt and oozed wound fluid, resulting in a very limited social life and few friends. For the 3 years that it was healed, she lived in fear that her leg ulcer would return, and now, just in the summer of last year, it has. Yet unlike Tracy, who was devastated by the return of her wound, there are some living with venous leg ulcers who do not want them to heal. But why is this? Often it happens with elderly people or those living in rural areas or just away from family. A VLU can make someone very socially isolated, meaning they may not want the nurse that they see 2 times a week to stop coming. It's been shown that some are so affected that they may try to interfere with the healing process of the wound. For example, sliding knitting needles down their bandages to stop their wound from healing. Around 25 years ago, a district nurse named Ellie Lindsay saw and identified this issue and set up a social enterprise called the Leg Club. This was a place run by volunteers where patients could go to get their wound dressed and treated by a professional, whilst also having interactions with other people with VLUs. Over the years, this has gone from strength to strength, with over 20 leg clubs now open in the UK. Ellie's work is even spreading internationally, with leg clubs opening up in Italy, Australia, and most recently, the USA. In 2015, Ellie was awarded an OBE for her work, and in October of last year, an honorary professorship. This now marks her to be Professor Ellie Lindsay, OBE. In the lockdown of COVID-19, she released a cupbook with the help of Leg Club members worldwide to help raise funds for her cause. However, unfortunately, around this time in 2020, leg clubs up and down the country had to close due to pandemic, which was bad news for many. This was, of course, not the only way that this patient group was affected. During the pandemic, many did not seek out for help for the fear that it set in place. In fact, in terms of general wound care, over 6 million people did not reach out for help. This means that these people are going now, 2 years after they should have gone, which has allowed many medical problems to advance and develop in severity. I found an analysis with figures that represent existing NHS patients with leg ulcers, comparing the percentages of new and existing patients. In 2018, 59% were newly diagnosed and placed in the system, with 41% having an existing leg ulcer and being pre-diagnosed. However, in post-pandemic 2021, only 17% are recently diagnosed and 83% existing. So what does this mean? It shows that, in general, less people are seeking help, and that those treating the wounds are suffering with the healing process. As I mentioned, 2018 cost the NHS £3 billion in this regard, yet with twice the number of patients and inflation rates soaring, this cost is bound to massively increase. Obviously, this increase in price is no surprise, and neither is the effect of the pandemic on the NHS across all departments, not just those affected by VLU's patients. Staff in the system are exhausted, and as we see in the news, it's been reported that the NHS is striking for the first time since it formed in 1948. This striking is because of a strain on the system with an estimated 110,000 vacancies, with 7 million people on waiting lists for hospital treatment. The striking is also for a better pay as a cost of living soars. Nurses have seen their salaries drop by 20% in real terms over the last 10 years, leaving many struggling to feed their families and pay their bills. In fact, 1 in 4 hospitals have had to open up a food bank to help support their employees. A Guardian article has concluded that, to quote, "The strike action threatens significant disruption to a health system already strained by persistent government underinvestment, the COVID-19 pandemic, and a severe shortage of staff." Clearly, some resolutions need to be made, in terms of the general NHS and in specific areas, such as VLUs. I would encourage you all to support those working in health and wound care, and charities such as Select Club who go the extra mile to help those in need. You could help yourself too, as anyone is at risk of a DVT. So next time you want to fly to a long journey, look into methods of compression and ankle exercises to help decrease the general risk. Think of how you would feel stuck in Tracy's place, trapped with an inescapable wound for many years to come, your life scary proof of an indeed invisible crisis.